Sup, nation?
My name, of course, Philip Defranco.
I got patriotic goosebumps!
And honestly, I wish our candidates would start talking about things that actually matter. Sup, nation? We are live at the Republican National Convention, as always. I'm Philip Defranco, and you are tuned into the Nation Decides 2012. With me today, we have the fantastic Elliott Morgan and the lovely Meg Turney.
Nice.
It's a gem shot.
Oh,
hello.
It's so
nice,
Google
so
money.
beautiful.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So we having a good first day at the RNC?
It's been
yeah, we had a
awesome.
great first day.
Yes, it started out fantastic because we
Yeah.
had this really mean but adorable police officer yell at us for
Yeah.
not
she
parking
was
in the right
scary,
area.
Nice.
but
And
she was
fantastic.
adorable.
Yeah, she was
she
like,
could have come through the window.
You can't be here.
Yeah.
And then she was like,
Yeah,
So
literally it was
pleasant?
like fisticuffs, and then she did, okay, bye.
it was wonderful. It's
Yeah,
fun.
It was
It's a
real
nice
cute.
place.
It was a great way to
So,
start the
yeah.
day, I think.
Yeah, and they're feeding us well.
Yeah, food everywhere.
of
It's
Google
amazing.
But guys, they are going to be back later on for a segment we are calling The Nation Speaks, which actually hit us up with your responses, things that you want us to talk about using hashtag PDS Live on Twitter. And the question I want you to talk about specifically, what matters most to you in a candidate and why? And also, do you take the third-party candidates seriously? So tweet us your answers. But yeah, the rest is unfortunately tropical storm, or rather what I call it, Pussy Hurricane Isaac has decided to mess up this first day, coming too close to Tampa on day one. But the good thing is it's not going to hit us directly. Really, we're just getting a bunch of rain, some wind, nothing Floridians can't handle. The convention officially convened today, but all events are canceled until Tuesday afternoon. But before we get into everything that is going to happen, what has happened, you may be asking, hey Phil, what is this whole RNC business? Well, we've got SourceFed here to explain exactly all that. Sorry.
A bunch of political and media types are going to convene at the Tampa Bay Times Forum building in Tampa, Florida, for the ruckus meetup that is the Republican National Convention. But what the heck is the Republican National Convention? I'm not quite sure, but I read some stuff on the internet, so let's try and break it down.
The RNC is the end of the presidential primaries and the start of the general election campaign. Are you excited? I'm excited. And three things are typically supposed to occur at the event. The first of which is the official nomination of presidential and vice presidential candidates, even though we kind of already know who they are.
Historically, like back in the day, this event could get a little crazy because there would be last-minute posturing by party members to usher their candidate to the top because the convention was the last chance to get their guy nominated.
This guy stands for our core values more.
No, this guy does.
Screw you.
No, buddy, screw you. Kick. Ugh. Punch. Oh, conceded.
And nominated. These days, things are boring. Because of the presidential primary system, we typically know who the candidates are going to be well before the convention. So that means it's just a party for a bunch of rich dudes smoking cigars made out of $1,000 bills, right? No, you're wrong, actually.
Well, maybe kind of.
A little bit.
But no, not really. I mean, there is Republicans bonding with other Republicans type of thing going on here. But there are also two very important tasks that still must take place. Delegates vote on issues and party principles are established. This is the creation of the platform. Oh,
Creation of a platform. And finally, there is the adoption of rules and procedures governing party activities like the nomination process for presidential candidates in the next election cycle.
So in 2012, it's kind of like this. Okay, well, I guess Romney is our guy because, well, that one was great, but diddled too many ladies.
And that one loves the church, but on a stalker type level. Even Jesus is like, yo, back off, dude.
Back off, dude. And that guy is way too clear on things that he wants to accomplish, and he uses logic and stuff. And the Republican Party doesn't need any of that.
Nah.
And at the end of the whole shebang, they're all going to scream and cheer for Romney and Paul Ryan and say things like, "We supported you the whole time.
I always had your back. Please give me a job.
Go get 'em, buddy. P.S. Boo Democrats."
Democrats. Blah. But that's my favorite part about these conferences, all the underhanded money grabbing and bullcrap. It's hilarious. It's like high school. And sometimes, believe it or not, America takes politics super seriously. But at these conferences, a lot of people are just there to party or schmooze or spread gossip, whatever.
It's kind of like any other type of conference. VidCon, Comic-Con, Conference Con. It's just a bunch of like-minded people coming together to like things and to hate on things. But in this case, it all has to do with the possible future president of America.
Yay! Which is why, in the end, it's about making that presidential candidate look good. They'll be broadcasting his smiley, robotic face all over the world and tweeting out all of his clever quips so they can get as many people as they can on the Romney train. Choo, choo. Romney 2012, all aboard. For more info and stuff, go to GOPconvention2012.com.
Or just ask a random person on the street because, knowledge is everywhere.
So the RNC canceled all the events today, but still officially convened, which essentially meant they went, hey guys, bye guys, and none of the scheduled speaking actually happened. The speakers we were supposed to hear from today included current governor of Florida, Rick Scott, who canceled all his RNC activities to deal with the hurricane, Along with Scott, we were going to get Senator from Kentucky Rand Paul, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley, and my personal point of interest today, Artur Davis. And my reason I'm so intrigued by Art is he used to rep Alabama's 7th District in the U.S. House of Representatives as a Democrat. A former Democrat who was the first in Congress not from Illinois to endorse Barack Obama in 2008. And a Democrat he remained until he said, quote, "If I were to leave the sidelines, it would be as a member of the Republican Party that is fighting the drift in this country in a way that comes closest to my way of thinking. Wearing a Democratic label no longer matches what I know about my country and its possibilities." And the Republicans are going to love this guy. I mean, first he endorsed Obama, but now supports Romney. He was a Democrat, but even when he was waving that flag, he voted against the Democratic-backed health care bill twice. More likely than not, he'll have something to do this week. I'm not sure what it is yet because everything's being moved. And having a former Democrat speak on Romney's behalf, just as Democrats are trying to get Republicans to attend their convention next week, is too good of an opportunity to pass up. And while we're holding our breath, seeing what is going to happen, the GOP is trying to rearrange everything to like 4 days into 3. It's going to be hard. But nation, even though we didn't have any convention events today, that doesn't mean nothing happened. The reason for that is Ron Paul don't care about no hurricane. Fearing no natural disaster, the presidential candidate held a rally yesterday. He was offered a speaking spot at the RNC, but the offer reportedly came with strings attached. First, he would have to submit the speech to be vetted by the Romney staff, which we went there, probably wouldn't get through. Secondly, he'd have to fully endorse Mitt as president. And what did he do? He said, no, not going to do it. He's quoted as saying, "It wouldn't be my speech. That wouldn't do everything I have done in the last 30 years. I don't fully endorse him for president." Of course, this isn't the first time Ron and the party have clashed. The Republican National Committee has been in a standoff with Ron Paul supporters over convention delegates. In Louisiana, Maine, and Massachusetts, the Ron Paul campaign got a number of delegates that he wanted on the convention floor. Louisiana in particular was insane. At the caucus vote, the Ron Paul people had a majority vote, but the party chairman was a Romney supporter. Paul's people were denied the right to speak, which is against party rules, and so they voted the chairman out, voted in their own chairman, and then the old chairman had them arrested. Fistfights broke out, like actual fighting. And it might not be popular to say, but I would welcome it, especially with UFC 151 canceled. But after all the nonsense and everyone calmed down, the Republican Party made compromises with the Paul campaign. And it really seemed like for a little bit that they wanted to quiet the Ron Paul revolution before they started raining on Romney's parade, or at the very least, the party was trying to buy Ron Paul's cooperation. They agreed to seat 17 of the remaining 28 delegates from Louisiana. They gave his son Rand Paul a key speaking position. Of course, that's been canceled now because of the storm. But even then, Ron's rally opened up with some great quotes clashing against his own party. For example, referencing Paul only getting 89 seconds at the RNC being disrespectful, or the suggestion that the party cared more about auditing a waitress on her tip money, but not auditing the Federal Reserve. Or my favorite quote, "The party will be handled by 10 fat white men who will decide everything that happens for this party." Paul's battle with the Republicans is far from over. I mean, his son's speech now canceled. It makes his future in the convention doubtful. And really, who knows what's going to happen next. But hey, we did go to the rally, like I said. It was very interesting, and here is a video on that.
I just knew that this is a politician who's unlike the others, and this is one who I really want to strive to be like when I'm older.
Trying to conserve the Constitution and its values.
I support Dr. Ron Paul.
For supporting my dad, the guy that is the greatest representative of the liberty movement in our time, my father, Ron Paul.
This is wonderful. It's wonderful to be among friends with my family, and for a good reason, to promote the cause of liberty in a revolutionary spirit. Thank you very much for being here. They said the revolution will not be happening. Don't they only wish?
When I found out where his stance was on the Federal Reserve, I immediately got very excited about him running.
Get the government out of our lives and off our back and out of our wallets. So there was an article, a headline came out the other day. It said, "Can we save the penny?" And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they wouldn't be talking that way. The bigger question that we will be forced to face is, can we save the dollar? And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they wouldn't be talking that way. The bigger question that we will be forced to face is, can we save the dollar? And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they wouldn't be talking that way. The bigger question that we will be forced to face is, can we save the dollar? And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they wouldn't be talking that way. The bigger question that we will be forced to face is, can we save the dollar? And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they wouldn't be talking that way. The bigger question that we will be forced to face is, can we save the dollar? And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they wouldn't be talking that way. The bigger question that we will be forced to face is, can we save the dollar? And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they wouldn't be talking that way. The bigger question that we will be forced to face is, can we save the dollar? And I got to thinking, well, they don't understand monetary policy or they w
he's not just a politician, he's a natural leader.
Most of my liberal friends will say, you know, I don't like his policies that much, but, you know, he sticks to his convictions. That's very unique to find that in a politician.
We will eventually get rid of the Federal Reserve.
You can't not trust the guy. He's an absolutely great leader. Since then, I've just become one of the biggest fans of the guy.
So instead of seeing this as a continuation of an era of the 20th century that gave us so much death and destruction and undermining of our liberties and conditions today that are so dangerous, let us think that we are now moving into a new era where we're going to concentrate on liberty and freedom and property and peace. I believe that is the cause that we should lead, and I thank you very much for being part of it. Thank you. Thank you.
Back Nation. So Ron Paul is our main topic today, and here with me to talk about it, once again, Elliott Morgan and Meg Turney.
Hey.
Thank you.
So we're talking about Ron Paul, and like you said before, the convention was like, absolutely, come on over, say your speech. You just have to make sure you accommodate the 17 rules. And of course, Ron Paul was like, I'm not going to do that. And so now a lot of his supporters are saying that they would like to see the GOP actually lose the election to send a message to the GOP saying that Ron Paul needs to be taken more seriously. Personally, I think it's kind of a cool idea. I don't know what y'all think.
I don't know. I don't feel like if Ron Paul or if Mitt Romney loses, they're going to say, you know what, we really should have gotten behind Ron Paul. You know what they're going to say? He was an incumbent. They're incredibly hard to unseat. They're going to have a million other excuses, and it's not going to be Ron Paul.
I agree to a certain extent. I think it comes down to the actual number of votes. I think you look back to 2008. The most voted for third-party candidate, I think, was Nader with around 730,000 votes compared to, I think, 130 million votes combined. If you have maybe a 10%, you can do something, but something that small, it'd be hard. I think everyone would have to go, okay, we are 100%. Do pinky promise? Pinky promise? We're going to do it.
You go for him. You're going for him. Don't screw me.
Even if you actually, though, were to get, like, let's say 10% of the vote or something, do you think even then, do you think that's what it would take for the GOP to be like,
absolutely. That's a swing in an election. 10% is huge. I just think that 2 million people voted for him in the primary.
Sure.
Those are people who are Democrats who registered Republican. They went through all of that trouble to vote for him. I think people could vote for him in this election, but 10% would be huge. People would absolutely pay attention to him.
I feel like people would. I'm not entirely sure that
political parties certainly would, because that could swing an election.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the GOP, though, would be like, man, we got to rethink everything. Because I feel like they tend to be slightly stubborn.
Like nothing would make the GOP think, wow, we really got to rethink everything, guys.
Yeah, that's true. So it brings up the this whole like idea that they're talking about with Ron Paul, where he's sort of like the untarnished, like, perfect candidate. Because you know, all the supporters are like, oh, all the other politicians, they have all these scandals that happen around them. And the only thing that's ever happened with Ron Paul is back years ago. Every time that he's ran for office, they bring up the whole newsletter thing.
Newsletters, yeah. So the newsletters, I think I have it here because it's too much information for me to put in my head.
It's just too much racism. You can't do it.
So what I read is essentially that he had newsletters from 1978 to I'm going to say 1994. During 1998 to 1994, some newsletters came out with what some people call racial/homophobic comments. Let's start.
I don't think you can argue whether or not they're racial.
Okay, well,
someone consider.
Let's read it. So certain things, they could be taken out of context. I'm reading it from the internet. Okay, just take that as you will.
Nothing good's on the internet.
I think we can safely assume that 95% of the black males in Washington, D.C. are semi-criminal or entirely criminal. Wait, we have another racist one about Martin Luther King, but I'm going to jump straight to homophobia.
Sure, spice it
why
up.
not? Yeah.
I miss the closet. Homosexuals, not to speak of the rest of society, were far better off when the social pressure forced them to hide activities. They could also not be as promiscuous. Is it any coincidence that the AIDS epidemic developed after they came out of the closet and started hyper-promiscuous sodomy?
Juicy.
So what do you think? I mean, you hear that Ron Paul is connected to it. Your initial reaction is what?
Disgust.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, his supporters say that
president.
He didn't have anything to do with it. They were ghostwritten.
That's what he said, yes.
But, I mean, his name, it's called like the Ron Paul newsletter. So
there were newsletters.
You maybe want to take a peek, and it's not just one newsletter that came out that he was like, all right, guys, come on, we need to clean this up.
Yeah.
It was years of newsletters that they're pulling these quotes from.
But, I mean, like you said, he did defend it with, it wasn't me, they were ghostwritten. Yes, the newsletters had my name on it, but it wasn't me.
I'm willing to give a guy a benefit of the doubt just because that crap is crazy. Like,
That is real crazy.
It's not like racial undertones. It's just like straight racism. So since it's so blatant, like, and so juicy, and everyone like if my knee-jerk reaction is like, this is the worst person ever, I feel like there's got to be like I got to give him some benefit of the doubt.
So you're saying is if it's so terrible, it can't be true.
It's just too ridiculous.
He was a politician at the time, so I mean, any politician can't write that in a public forum. Maybe in an email, private email, of course you can write something like that. But write that in a public forum and think no one's going to find it. You know what I mean? So maybe he didn't, but still.
But okay, so say that in a world that he actually did it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that he did.
No, don't say you didn't,
Right.
but maybe.
In a world where he didn't make these, even if it or he did, does it matter if his stances and what he wants to do? Like, if he didn't want to enforce anything, like said that you can't get married if you're gay, but personally he thought whatever, he wouldn't be the first racist or homophobic president.
Yeah.
No.
And it came down to stances. Would you still vote for him, or is it more of a personal relationship with your president?
I probably could not, in good conscience, vote for him if all of that is true. For the most part, when it comes to these type of things, I feel like what it boils down to is people want their presidential candidate to be their best friend, and they want him to be like, you know, they want somebody that they can go hang out with and get a beer with. But at the end of the day, for me personally, I just want somebody who's going to just presidentialize the country really well.
Presidentialize.
The best.
I like the word.
But I agree that I completely agree, Elliot, that stances are so much more important than, you know, if he tripped a baby at a basketball game and stole their lollipop. But if he's racist or if he's homophobic, that was a great analogy.
Sorry, I'm just imagining
Get on
that in my
board.
head. Okay, I'm
no,
on
but
board.
if he was a terrible person, but if he's racist or discriminatory, that matters because he's making policies for people who he may think are criminals based on their skin color, or he's making policies for people he thinks that should be in a closet where they can't live freely. Like that doesn't sit right with me.
So, bigger thing to me. Do you think that he can actually change anything if he got enough of the vote?
Absolutely, I think he could absolutely be taken.
And also, all his past aside, would you vote for him in this election? Not saying, are you definitely 100%? Would you?
I will say we were at the rally, and when everyone started cheering, I was like, yeah, I don't know what's happening.
It was infectious.
I will vote for you.
I've been singing the song all day.
Yeah, I go back and forth on whether or not I want to vote for Ron Paul. A part of me is like, absolutely, free everything, legalize everything, it's wonderful. But then the other part of me is like, that could not work. That would be bad. Like, buildings would be on fire everywhere.
I don't know.
So, I don't know.
If the people that love Ron Paul actually want the Ron Paul revolution to happen, I say just say that you're going to do it, and then do it, and then see what happens.
Yeah, dedicate your vote to him and follow through.
Yeah, because it could be a big moment, not only in the history of politics, but more specific to the Republican Party. Which actually, fantastic transition, Philip. That brings us to our next video, the history of the Republican Party.
Okay, so we're talking about the Republican Party. I'm going to tell you all about the Republican Party. I'm going to take a little history turd from the ground. I'm going to scoop it up. I'm going to put it in a plastic bag, and then I'm going to hurl it at your face. Does that seem mean? It's just because I got a little political crush on you, and things are moving fast in this relationship, okay? So buckle up. So we're going to start with a history of the Republican Party. So when you're characterizing them in your head as either like evil, oil-hungry warmongers or misunderstood saviors of our nation, you can at least know where both of those grossly inaccurate stereotypes come from. The United States Republican Party emerged way back in 1854. Why? You ask, well, that's a loaded question, my friend. So get ready for a bullet of knowledge straight to your freaking brain. Ever heard of the Kansas-Nebraska Act? No? What about just Kansas? Like 4 people live there, but all roads lead there, I guess. So this Kansas-Nebraska Act allowed Western territories to decide whether they were going to have slaves or not have slaves, which, by the way, that blows my mind that states debated that civilly. I always think of slavery as this massive issue that incited a war, but I forget that a lot of times it was probably just a bunch of white dudes having a casual conversation around a water cooler, or water well, or river, whatever. I don't know how those savages got their water. So slavery was a big issue, and the people from the North were against it. They became known as the Republican Party. The Southern people were, unsurprisingly, for slavery because they depended on it for their livelihood. So where did that whole word Republican come from? It came from a guy named Horace Greeley in 1854. Greeley stated in an editorial, "We should not care much whether those thus united against slavery were designated Whig, Free Democrat, or something else, though we think some simple name like Republican would more fitly designate those who had united to restore the Union to its true mission of champion and promulgator of liberty rather than propagandist of slavery." And people talk cool back then. So there you have it. The Republican Party began as an anti-slavery movement from the North. So what the crap happened? Now if you look at an electoral map, that ain't what it looks like. Either some complicated, convoluted chain of events occurred, or everyone collectively changed their minds at the exact same time, or, I don't know, maybe everybody just decided to move. It's confusing. Well, as it turns out, it's actually not all that confusing. At the time of the Civil War, these new Republicans were like the hippies, the free everyone people that ruffled everyone's feathers. The Democrats were repping the poor folk, aka the farmers, because you can't just walk on somebody's property and take away their way of living. The idea of freeing all of the slaves was radical and a huge blow economically. Because of the Democratic Party's support of the lower class and their prominence among minimum-waged folk, the freed slaves joined the Democrats and hightailed it up north where they wouldn't be discriminated against so much. Then a big thing happened. It was called the Civil Rights Movement. You may have read about it in history class. And that's when things get crazy. Now, all of a sudden, the Democratic Party has freedmen who supported things like affirmative action and anti-discrimination laws, blah, blah, blah. So now, all these conservative people in the Democratic Party hopped on over to the Republican Party. Sound familiar? Conservative, Republican, liberal, Democrat. So the philosophies geographically have remained the same, but the parties have kind of morphed. So, fast forward, what does the Republican Party believe nowadays? Well, it varies depending on who you ask or who you elect or who you think is more charming, but there is one basic tenet. Stances can change according to the social or cultural climate, but one philosophy remains the same. Small freaking government. Republicans believe that the government shouldn't be all up in your business. They prioritize individuals, not societies. Morals, not ethics. They believe in the preservation of values. They believe that equality is found in opportunity, that others are not to interfere with your rights, that with personal freedom comes personal responsibility, and above all, the Republican Party stands for, you guessed it, everybody's favorite word, freedom. Sound like the perfect political party? Maybe. But maybe not. In my opinion, both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party have a good amount of corruption in them. More probably than the news outlets would even have time to report. At the end of the day, you don't vote on who the better party is. It's a bigger issue than that. It boils down to you and what you believe and what direction you believe this country should take. I'm Elliott Morgan. Bye. Man, that was great.
Nation, we had a story about a Democrat going Republican earlier, but now we have one that is just the opposite. And that is former Governor of Florida, Charlie Crist. He held office from 2007 to 2011, and he tried to run for U.S. Senate in 2009, but he had to run as an independent because he lost to Marco Rubio in the general election. In one of our earlier weekly roundups, we mentioned that the DNC was planning to actually bring some prominent Republicans to speak at their convention. And it's looking like we shouldn't be surprised if Charlie Crist jumps on a plane for Charlotte next week. In fact, it turned out today ABC News confirmed that he will actually have a speaking role at the DNC next week. And while he was governor, it should be known that he signed into law a bill that expanded health care coverage statewide for autism disorders, and another that did the same for low-income health coverage. And he created a public as well as private insurance option for the state. When he said he was going to run for Senate in 2009, the Tea Party didn't really much care for that. Their backing of Marco Rubio pushed Crist out of the running for the Republican nomination. So Crist ran as an independent, but still lost Rubio in the general election. And now we see Rubio speaking Thursday. He's the last speaker before Romney himself takes the stage. And while Crist's endorsement of Obama is a big story, it's mostly symbolic. It's been argued that the Republican Party disowned him for a long time ago, and that's not a big deal. But on the topic of party symbols, here is another video. Transition!
Say hello to the symbols that represent the two most powerful parties in American politics, the Republican elephant and the Democratic donkey. What's happening, elephant? What up, donkey? The donkey, according to the Democrats, is humble, unpretentious, courageous, and a lovable smarty. But the Republicans see an animal that is stubborn, ridiculous, silly, and one that looks like a stinky horse living on the street because it's homeless. The elephant, stately, intelligent, strong, and totally kick-ass in a circus, according to the Republicans. But the Democrats see it as pompous, dumb, and conservative, and only capable of generating a really big poop. The donkey made its first appearance during the election race of 1828, which pitted John Quincy Adams against Andrew Jackson. Jackson ended up being the first ever Democrat directly associated with the ass. His opponents likened him to a jackass during his campaign due to his populist beliefs and his "let the people rule" slogan. Jackson got a kick out of this and adopted the donkey for his campaign posters. The donkey was used as a symbol representing the Democratic Party as a whole for the first time in a political cartoon published in 1837. But it wasn't until the 1870s that the donkey became a popular representation for the party. And it turns out the popularization of both the Democratic donkey and the Republican elephant can be accredited to a German-born political cartoonist by the name of Thomas Nast. In 1870, Nast penned a political cartoon for Harper's Weekly depicting a donkey kicking a dead lion. The donkey represented Copperhead Press, and the lion was Abraham Lincoln's former Secretary of War who had recently died. This was more of an unflattering commentary on the Democratic press than it was on the Democratic Party, but nonetheless, the use of the donkey was the inception point for a public that would soon associate the party with the symbol. Then, in 1874, Nast made use of the donkey once again. In a new cartoon, the donkey was dressed in a lion's skin and it was frightening the heck out of a bunch of animals in a zoo. Of course, each animal represented something other than an animal, and one of said animals was an elephant, representing the Republican vote. Nast was a Republican himself, but he was frustrated and viewed the Republican voters and publications as hulking, confused behemoths. So, both the donkey and the elephant were first used in uncomplimentary pieces, but he continued the symbolism in future pieces. The American public got on board, and the rest, as they say, is history, which is something that I say when I don't want to talk about something anymore.
Nation, these conventions are more about than just nominating a candidate. It's also about these parties coming together and building their party platforms. After the Republican National Committee released their platform, one prominent Republican wanted to see a revision. GOP Senator Scott Brown is asking the Republican Party to relax its stance on abortion. The GOP platform wants a constitutional amendment banning abortion, no exceptions. Brown's pro-choice, and he urged GOP leaders to recognize that you can still be pro-choice and a good Republican. He wants the party to take a big tent strategy and be more inclusive of people that may not agree on single issues. Brown's trying hard to do something smart here. He's essentially keeping with the party's philosophy of small government, but saying, hey, maybe we define small government differently. Let's be friends. And it allows discussion, and even more important, it allows debate, which is always better because it forces you to defend your beliefs against others. On the other side of the aisle, we also have House Democrats making their own push to change their party's platform. Some of them are wanting to have specific language illustrating their party's commitment to our internet freedom. Obviously, it's a huge issue to me if you're watching right now, and maybe it's a big issue to you. And this group of Democrats wants to make sure that the party makes it clear that they are going to fight for net neutrality, that they want the party platform to say, quote, the Democratic Party stands for global internet freedom, the free flow of information online, a free and open internet, and protection from online censorships and privacy violations, which from Democrats is usually par for the course. They've been for net neutrality, at least in what they say. But the choice for the internet freedom isn't so cut and dry. I mean, remember those Ron Paul delegates we were talking about before? Well, getting those delegates in allowed him and his supporters to influence the GOP's party platform, including adding internet freedom. The platform, among other things, states, oh, here we go, we will state any effort to shift control away from the successful multi-stakeholder approach of internet governance and toward governance by international or other intergovernmental. That was it? I think I got it.
Got it.
The way we're understanding it is kind of like the Democrats. They want to keep internet service providers from messing with the content you upload. However, they feel the best way to do that is to make sure that no one entity has enough power to affect change. Corporations are going to do what corporations are going to do, governments are going to do what they're going to do, and Philip DeFranco's are going to do what Philip DeFranco's going to do. If we all keep a consistent stake in it, the thinking is no one will screw anyone else, which could easily be argued. But it's nice to know that the GOP doesn't want Verizon or some other big guy to do what they want with the internet service and kind of screw you. But Nation, we're wondering what you're thinking about what's happening at the RNC, so let's find out in the next segment called The Nation Speaks, Echo! We're pulling your comments, tweets, really anything that you want us to, that's terrible. And we're going to be sitting down right here and talking about them. With that, we're going to yeah, here we go.
Nation Speaks time.
I thought there was something else there.
All right,
so what's the first one?
We're going to take a look at a tweet from Jen Meets World. She said, we asked you guys what you look for in a politician, and she said someone with integrity whose opinions and stances can't be bought, which is nice. It sounds nice.
Doesn't matter what the stances are, just as long as they're consistent.
Well, sometimes they stick to them. Ron Paul's got that in the back.
I mean, do you think because, everything that's in place now, everyone's opinion is kind of bought? And
sure.
People can't be like, buddy, like, hey, we agree on things, here's some money.
Maybe everybody, and I hate to go back to him because I'm going to sound like a super big supporter of him, but maybe everyone except Ron Paul, but that might also be because sometimes he sounds just like a crotchety old man that's just like screaming obscenities, even though it makes perfect sense. It sounds like he's yelling at everybody to get off his yard.
But it's probably just worth mentioning that Barack Obama was the one who said, everybody donate to my campaign so that I don't have to take corporate money and then I won't be bought.
Wait, are you saying that he doesn't?
He does now. That was his platform the first time around, and he absolutely now takes corporate money.
So is it still a good thing that he argued that?
No, it's terrible because he ended up going back on it.
So what you're saying is you no longer support Barack Obama?
That's not what I'm
saying. So you're saying
I'm just saying, look, I can
do
show both sides. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying you're both
So you're
jerks
voting for Ron.
saying that I couldn't say both sides, and I've said both sides.
Perfect. Wait, do we have another tweet?
We have other tweets, of course. Integrity being another one, and this one, Rudy on a bike says, honesty, integrity, and the ability to save the world from evil vampire robot Nazis who are also zombies. Does that sound like someone we know?
I don't know.
Sounds like PD and MT to me.
No, okay. So it still sounds like I want this noble figure on white knight sort of. Sorry, I'm like words are not. And then I imagine a sword and armor.
Some people said specific things. If we go to Brent C. Stanley, he said, "I'm ready for a candidate that will cut spending, balance the budget, and get the U.S. out of debt." So there's something that's not super noble, steedy.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
Repeat those other things that weren't about nobility. Sorry.
Cut spending.
Boom.
Balance the budget.
Boom.
And get the U.S. out of debt. All the same thing.
So money.
Yeah,
I agree with that. That's my most important issue, I think.
I think the debate, though, is like how you do all of those things. I think we can all agree that all those sound wonderful.
A pretty big deal.
Yeah. All right, moving on, we have hashtag what matters most is good, honest morals and good intentions with the means to carry out these tasks and promises. And that comes from Michael Fuchs, 88. Yeah, that's wonderful. I want somebody with good morals. I do. I like good people.
Hey, that's surprising.
But
People, you know what? Some people don't like that.
hey, I think if I disagree with someone on certain issues, I don't think that disqualifies them from being president.
Well, we also asked if third-party candidates were a waste of time or if you take them seriously, and you guys said from @DannyBoy07 that third-party candidates can bring new approaches towards our problems. Even if not elected, we can still consider their ideas, which I think is interesting because we were talking about Ron Paul. Even if he has a little bit of a swing, he may be affecting party platforms.
That's like the most condescending response. Like, you're not going to get, but we might.
You think he's going to get elected? You think he's going to get elected?
No,
you want to put
I mean,
your stake right now?
No, it's just, we can still consider their ideas.
He could be affecting the Republican platform.
I would be hurt if I got people to vote for me and they were like, well, we're still going to actually pay attention to what you're saying.
That's exactly what you just said earlier in the show on Paul should be. All right, well, we also had Hey Bradshaw saying third-party candidates can be a source for fresh ideas, but they cannot generate enough critical mass to become electable, which is pretty much the exact same thing. Again, people are telling us that they're not going to get elected, but they have good ideas.
So, I mean, everyone always talks about that. Do you believe in the three-party, or not the three-party, the two-party system? Do you believe in something that's greater than that, or no?
No.
I think what's happening, it doesn't matter. Like, people are like, oh, if we get enough people who don't like the two-party system, then we'll abolish the two-party system. I think it's going to happen regardless, because I think what you're seeing right now, especially with the younger generation coming up, is you have a bunch of people who aren't voting because they look at the Republican Party like, I have conservative tendencies myself, but I don't want to say that I'm a Republican because I can't say that I'm a Republican. So until the Republican Party decides to fix themselves, then we're not going to have anybody actually voting for them. So naturally, the Republican Party is going to get smaller and smaller, and the Democratic Party is going to get bigger.
But would you just not vote? I mean, voter apathy, sure, is at an all-time high, but I mean, we still want our young people to be voting, even if they don't. If they don't believe
absolutely
in the two
get out and
parties.
vote. I'm talking about the parties. Like, what's going to happen is they're going to get out and vote. They're just going to vote for one party. And one party only, because the Republican Party is going to refuse to change.
I don't know. It's just me. I hate the two-party system. I think
I think that they can affect change. I do think voting for a third-party candidate can eventually affect change. If exactly like you said.
Critical mass.
Yes.
Critical
or
mass.
if you say, like, I'm really going to vote for Ron Paul. You better not screw me. You better vote for Ron Paul, too. And enough people do it, it'll really affect change, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that bothers me about the whole, like, you're throwing away your vote, kid, is it's not like you're voting for Santa Claus or Tom Cruise. And I don't mean to bash their campaign.
If you're voting for Obama, you're kind of voting for Santa Claus.
No.
Listen.
Wait, why?
A little bit. They both just give free gifts out to everyone.
Is that what it is?
True.
Is that what it is?
Nobody
I
wants to
pulled
get
myself in
Claus
check.
taken
You
away from
need
them.
to chickadee check yourself over there.
And we have, I think, another tweet right here. Let's see. Here we go. How close our values line up and how genuine a candidate seems. No one wants a snake in office. Snakes are the worst.
Say, you know what?
Snakes are terrible.
Snakes,
Snakes
I'll
are
vote for that snake. Has anybody ever said that?
I know. I kind of come from the mentality that they're all snakes, and then it's just a matter of choosing like which is the least dangerous snake. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're all pretty terrible.
Well, so we had two positive third-party tweets,
Oh,
but we
God.
did have one anti-third-party tweet by Brennan Bruner. He said, I think third-party candidates are just a distraction. Everything in this country is decided by 5%. They're just vote snags. So, but isn't that a positive thing? You know what I mean? He's saying that's a bad thing, that they could cause their party to lose, but if they're 5%, they pull 5%, they could affect change. In their
Well, I mean, it's the same idea why, I don't know, I remember growing up, the way I got into politics was I didn't even know anything about it, and my parents would go, Nader, messing up the vote. And like people would literally, they get furious because, you know, if it's a small percentage, it can swing it in the wrong way.
Absolutely.
But I think, I don't know.
I think it also kind of begs the question, like, you argue, is it going to make a difference? But, like, does who we have as president make that big of a difference?
Absolutely.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm just saying, is it that big of a deal?
Morgan.
I don't know, because I remember 4 years ago, before Obama was president, and I feel exactly the same then as I do now. So, I know, it's crazy. Maybe, this is it, though. I'm sorry. What I meant to say was this is the most important election ever, and if we don't
but it is
vote,
important
then...
who you vote into office and
So you're
who
saying
you
it's
important.
inform.
So you're saying that if a Republican had gone through, right, McCain won, and he had, 2 years later he had control, like he could do whatever he wanted, do you think we'd still be in the same place?
I don't think we'd be in the same place, but I think in our everyday, day-to-day lives, I don't buy into this whole like doomsday idea that whoever is president is going to dictate whether or not we have horrible lives. Both parties right now are literally like, if the other party wins, everything's ruined, and I don't think that's
true.
true.
But I mean, think about for social issues. If you're a gay couple and a Republican comes in and says, "Constitutional amendment, you cannot get married," that could be a huge effect on your life. If you are raped and you want an abortion and they say no abortions, no exceptions, huge change in your life, depending on who is in the office.
Yeah.
Not the
Okay, so last thing with it. Last words.
Last words. I support Ron Paul, even though he looks like a bird, I think he's great.
You just love saying that.
I just wanted to get that out there. That's all.
It's beautiful.
No, I don't know who I support. Maybe at the end of this 2 weeks, I'll find out who I actually support, and I can say definitively.
And Meg, last words?
I tried really hard to be bipartisan today. And the
You
blue
nailed it.
blazer is coming out tomorrow, and nobody can stop me.
It's okay.
Barack Obama 2012.
We have conservative, liberal. It's
Oh.
got to be both. So safe.
I didn't call him a conservative.
The Nation. Oh, that outing is going to close out The Nation Speaks, but it doesn't mean you have to stop sending us your thoughts. You know, tweet, comment, do whatever you do. Make sure, though, you use the hashtag PDS Live on Twitter so I can see it, and we'll be taking some of the best and possibly the worst and use them on the show. But that is really it. Tomorrow we're going to have Ann Romney speaking. Not on the show. Don't worry. Don't worry, Meg. It's okay. She's Mitt Romney's wife. If you were like, that name sounds so familiar. She was supposed to talk Monday, but they moved it to Tuesday. Everything is being reorganized and it's confusing. But be sure to tune in tomorrow. And the night after that, I think the night after that, we're going to be the same place, same channel. As always, I'm Philip Defranco. You've just been filled in. I love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.
We did it.
Smack!